Welcome back to Creating Your Life on Sex and Romance. This is episode 45, The Four Kinds of Love. Well, I'm back. It's been about a year. In the last year, we sold our home in Silicon Valley and moved to about 2.5 hours away on the way to Reno, outside of Sacramento, in a small town called Auburn. We bought a new house here. So as you can see, I have a new office. New layout in a bit. Color's a little bit different in here, but that's okay. I'm sorry I've been away for so long, but when you're unsettled, it's a challenge to get settled again. And finally, we're in. We've got things in place, and I'm happy enough with my office that I can focus on getting back to these videos. So we're going to talk about the four kinds of love, and unconditional love particularly. And I'm going to start with the ancient Greeks. They define four kinds of love. And the thing that's interesting about the Greeks is that they have words for everything. And what they do is they want to distinguish really clearly the differences among things. And this is why vocabulary was very important to them. And it's also kind of what I start off all my books with, a golden verse of Pythagoras. Defining things clearly makes a difference. And sometimes it clears up confusions. So the first kind of love, eros, which is a kind of physical love, sensual desire. It includes both sexual and social desire, but it's more on the physical level. It doesn't really mean always sex. For the Greeks, hanging out with the guys or, doing the kinds of things physically together. That's why the Olympics came out of that. They were very much into the physicalness of things and the desires associated with that. Storge, emotional love. This is kind of like the affection that's among parents and a child. They also have philia, a kind of mental love associated with friendship and loyalty. And then agape, spiritual love, this unconditional, selfless love, one that does not require the beloved to return it or anybody else return it. It's not dependent on anything but itself. These four things help people understand that when they're feeling something, it could be different. It could be at different levels. And often when a couple get together or people are working together and they're talking about love, they may be talking about different things or they have different expectations about it. So when you date, ask yourself this: is this relationship based mainly in sensual feelings? Is it primarily based on eros, the physicalness of it? Is there some kind of true friendship and loyalty that's developing in this relationship? And are there any selfless acts of love freely given? Has it really moved into unconditional love? Is it merely just sensual? Or is there something more mental about it? Friendship, loyalty? Is it just friends with benefits? Or are there actually these moments where somebody is sacrificing in the best sense of that for the other without any expectation of return? One way or the other, all people, I think, aspire to unconditional love, and they expect it from others. It's a challenging contradiction of sorts. So let's talk a little bit more about unconditional love, because I think a discussion of this can help a bit. I have a friend, an acquaintance, who she was looking, she had been looking for a relationship for a while. And one day she showed my wife and I this list of things, of the kind of things that the man in her life had to do if she was ever going to give him unconditional love. In other words, she had a list of conditions before giving unconditional love. And she failed to see the irony of it, but it was very telling that, because I don't think this is unique to her. I think this is it. People expect unconditional love, but they don't realize how it's absolutely related to their own giving of unconditional love. Let's talk about love in a particular sense. Romeo and Juliet is, I think, a great example about this. In my book, I talk also about Tolstoy and Dostoevsky, Anna Karenina, which is a brilliant novel on distinguishing different kinds of love and what unconditional love is versus the kind of love that's expected in society. A recent movie on Anna Karenina that Tom Stoppard wrote is also a brilliant example of art showing how that works. And Tolstoy does it also with a book called The Idiot, uh, which is a marvelous novel about a young man who gives unconditional love and is not prepared for Russian social circles that cannot understand him and do not recognize that this is what he's all about. I won't give away the ending of either's. Let's just say it ends very interestingly and very Russian. Shakespeare is one of the greats in Western literature. He's at the pinnacle, and the reason why is that he is able to encapsulate things, states of consciousness, in ways that nobody else does in the same way, and he does it brilliantly. Shakespeare's great because he, in this particular example, his plays are full of all different kinds of love, and in this, he's talking about that new love, that young love that people um, fall into. Romeo, as you may recall, has hopped the wall and he's standing in the garden looking up at the balcony. And in the meantime, in the scene right before this famous scene, he's listening to his friends, Mercutio and others, and they're making fun of him. They're looking for him, and they're gesturing sexually. They're debasing his love into something very, very uh, obscene. In fact, it's one of the most obscene scenes in Shakespeare. If you really know how to read it, and he's doing this on purpose. He's doing what great jewelers do. If they're going to show you a beautiful diamond, they're going to put it on black velvet. So the scene before this is a black, dark scene. It's that love that people are misinformed about, that they think it's all sexual. They think it's all obscene, something to get animalistic in. For Romeo, it's something else. And he makes a comment that, the heart there that's been untouched by love would not understand him. And then he turns, and then Juliet comes out on this balcony. And Romeo says this famous line, "But soft, what light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun." And think about what that's doing, because when the first time somebody reads this and gets what Shakespeare is doing metaphorically, it's brilliant. It brilliantly captures the experience, the state of consciousness that most of us have experienced when we are in love with somebody. There's this radiance, that light that comes from somebody. From speaking as a man who's had this experience from more than one woman, where that love is there, and that radiance that comes in, it's incredible. And notice he compares it to the east. Well, what happens in the east? The sunrise. Sun rises. She is that light is the east, and Juliet is the sun. So it's the dawn of a new day, a dawn of love. He's compressing all of this into one or two lines, and it's brilliantly done. This is the kind of thing that people aspire to and look forward to. So imagine this and think about unconditional love for a moment. Imagine sex imbued with unconditional love. You might ask yourself a couple questions imagining this. Is there anything lustful or animalistic about that sex? Is it actually elevating and sublime in its beauty? Or think about romance imbued with unconditional love. Is there anything artificial or uncomfortable in those romantic advances and adventures? Is the experience more about sharing the wonder and the joy of another? Think about marriage imbued with unconditional love. Is there ever a reason to hold anger or resentments, or to turn that person into a mere object of your pleasure? Would you ever fight with that person, the one you love unconditionally? Or does anger, resentments, and fighting signal areas of withholding where more unconditional love is actually needed in your lives? Imagine commitment imbued with unconditional love. Is there anything self-pitying about such a commitment? Would not such commitment embody loyalty, care, and joy experienced from the results of that commitment? Unconditional love often develops in people who have, because they have children. And what I want to do is I want to read a passage, a couple passages from this book, Alphabet of the Imagination, by a gentleman, Harold C. Goddard. He died in 1950. He um, his daughters, back in the 1980s, I believe, published this book of his. They collected essays, and one was called "The Key to Walt Whitman." Walt Whitman was a famous American poet. He wrote "Leaves of Grass" during the Civil War period. It's beautiful, beautiful poem. It's alive and it's full of unconditional love and joy. And Harold C. Goddard was trying to explain something very particular to Walt Whitman's state of consciousness. And so what he did is he related it to parent and child. Now, the passage I'm going to read is not necessarily the kind of thing that's happened to most of it or all of us. But some of you, I think, will capture what I'm getting at, but at least you can imagine and understand what he's getting at. He says, when you were a very little boy or girl, there used to come a time when there was just one chocolate cream left in the box. You wanted it dreadfully, but you were afraid, or perhaps you were too high principled to take it. So you just looked at it with a sigh, and then, quite to your surprise, you heard your mother saying, "Take it, my dear," in a tone that seemed to add, "It will give me more pleasure to have you eat it than to eat it myself." Now, Goddard then notes how a child would wonder why a parent would do such a thing, but then the child one day grows up and becomes a parent. And this is what Goddard says. You looked out the window one morning and saw your little girl strutting proudly off in her new coat, or you saw your little boy riding past on his new bicycle, and a revelation of exactly how that youngster was feeling came over you so intensely that for an instant you could hardly have told whether you were indoors or out, whether you were yourself or that child. Somewhere a barrier had broken down. Somehow you realized as a solid fact what you had hitherto always considered sentimental pretense, that it is possible to have as much fun out of someone else's fun as out of your own. That coat and that bicycle were among the best investments you ever made. The paradox of your mother and the chocolate cream was explained. That is an experience of unconditional love, and this was something that Walt Whitman exhibited. So here's the thing, and this is one of the secrets to joy and happiness, and I'll leave this with you. Think about gift giving. It could be at birthdays, Christmas, or another time, maybe at a wedding. And you know the feeling that happens when somebody gives you the perfect gift. I mean, how the joy that can come, oh my gosh, it's a surprise, and you open it and you're totally amazed, and the joy you feel. Now imagine also the joy when you give the perfect gift at a birthday or Christmas or at a wedding, and you see the joy, that joy in the other person. Here's the secret. The joy you experience receiving the perfect gift is the same as the joy you experience giving the perfect gift. If you go through your life and you're not getting what you want, and you feel depressed, and you're not, people aren't giving to you the way you would want them to give, turn it around. If you're looking for that joy and experience, think about giving to others unconditionally. Think about giving people perfect gifts. Think about serving them in some way, and start bringing more of that into your life. You will be surprised how giving unconditional love results in more unconditional love in your life. And suddenly you're having those experiences. In other words, you're in charge of having the experience of that joy and happiness that comes from giving. You're not just waiting around for somebody else to give it to you. You're giving it, and you're having the experience. Unconditional love is giving without any thought of receiving. And if you want unconditional love in your life, if you want to be unconditionally loved, it only works if you're giving it. And some of us need to practice more and more every day. Okay, that's it for now. Next episode, the 4 marriage questions. We'll talk about marriage and the kind of things that can come up when you're thinking about it. Go to markandrealexander.com for more.